So this is Christmas.
I love Christmas. For as long as I can remember, I've loved Christmas. I love the atmosphere that surrounds Christmas, the feeling of being with family, and the spirit of gift giving. And as an extension of that, I love a lot of Christmas-related media. I love Christmas music, despite the frequency with which retail workers are forced to listen to the same dozen songs. I love Christmas books, even if the majority of them follow a fairly tired formula. And I love Christmas movies, no matter how many times it seems I watch the same select few. Perhaps the Christmas movie that I've seen the most since its release 20 years ago is The Polar Express. At some point, it became a bit of a tradition to watch it every year on Christmas Eve. For some, this might seem fairly ordinary, perhaps even agreeable, especially to audiences who enjoyed the movie when it first released. It was one of the first 50 films in 25 years to get a perfect A+ score from audiences on CinemaScore, and even the legendary film critic Roger Ebert, a contrarian though he often may have been, awarded it his highest rating of 4 stars. But to many others after the film's release, and perhaps to many more in the years since, an annual rewatch sounds odd, unacceptable, an insult to other Christmas movies. And it seems a big part of that is the movie's character animation, which some viewers find uncanny, creepy, or straight up horrifying, enough to make them write off the film and the possibility of rewatching it entirely. And fair enough, to each their own. But I still love it anyway. Perhaps it's because I've spent the last 20 years enjoying video games like Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, with realistic motion-captured animation but otherwise fairly cartoonish designs, and L.A. Noire, with both highly accurate facial and body capture animation that were recorded separately and Frankensteined together. But The Polar Express just doesn't look that weird to me, and even when it does, it really doesn't bother me, because my appreciation for the film goes beyond that. I think the story, as weird as it can be at times, is captivating and engaging, and its themes, as surface level as they may be at times, are interesting, sweet, and even inspiring, exploring the strength of faith, the importance of self-discovery, and the power of wonder and nostalgia. So if only to answer this question for myself, or perhaps also to justify to my family why we continue to watch this movie every year, this is why I think everyone else is wrong about The Polar Express. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single child in possession of a good prefrontal cortex must doubt the existence of Santa Claus. I think every child at some point on some level wants to believe that someone like Santa is real, and any child who does will inevitably reach an age when they begin to have their doubts about his existence. That's why I think the opening of The Polar Express is so universal and nostalgic. It's a feeling that so many of us have. Don't get me wrong, I love Christmas movies about the importance of families, about the power of community and kindness, about the acceptance of generosity and compassion, and even those about Santa Claus himself. But I think there's something beautiful about the way The Polar Express focuses on this belief, and especially the doubting of this belief, and does so in a way that doesn't really feel overly childish or condescending. That the boy is seeking these answers in the first place demonstrates how he is growing up and discovering himself, seeking certainty in an uncertain world. His growing curiosity signals the beginning of his personal transformation, and the ticking clock signals the fleeting nature of his childhood. And both are interrupted by the arrival of a train. Like some of the shots that preceded it, the train itself feels nostalgic and wonderful, not unlike the drawings in Chris Van Allsburg's book, on which the film is an adaptation. It's like a childhood dream come to life. More than that though, the train's appearance is both literal and metaphorical, a vessel of transformation, representing, in the hero boy's case, the journey from doubt to belief. The act of boarding is magical, a childhood dream of embarking on an adventure, yet the boy's hesitation to do so reflects his internal conflict, fear of the unknown versus a yearning for adventures and answers. But belief is not always about certainty, it's about taking the first step, in this case towards independence and agency. Boarding the train is a leap of faith, a choice to believe, not necessarily in Santa, but in the possibility of something extraordinary, in the power of faith. And this leap is immediately reflected in the mise-en-scène. The snowy street is dark and mundane, whereas the train is magical and warm, festive and nostalgic, capturing the excitement and mystery of Christmas adventures, and the transition itself a crossing from reality into wonder. And seeds of belief are planted in the boy's mind immediately after hopping aboard. The train is real, and the other children have already endorsed and supported its magic. Maybe it's not a lie after all. Shortly afterwards, the train makes one last pickup, on the other side of the tracks. The screenplay describes the neighborhood consisting of smaller, worn-down houses, with not much Christmas cheer on display, as the train makes its stop at the saddest, loneliest house to pick up a boy whose name we later discover is Billy. Billy's introduction shifts the hero boy's focus outwards, towards others, especially beginning when he stops the train so Billy can hop aboard, beginning his journey of empathy and understanding. He begins to see that belief is not just a personal journey, but something shared with and supported by others. And after this, we get the Hot Chocolate song, which is very fun and cool and did not deserve to come third for the 2004 Stinkers Bad Movie Award for Worst Song or Song Performance in a Film. It shouldn't have even been nominated, and I will die on this hill. Although I will admit that the waiters' faces and movements look very awkward and are very fun to pay attention to. It also leads to a sweet moment in which the hero girl puts aside a cup of hot chocolate for Billy, who otherwise would have missed out, possibly the first step in the girl's journey towards leadership and initiative. But she leaves her ticket behind, and in trying to return it, the hero boy also loses it, though only temporarily, as we see it fly away from the train, get whipped up by a pack of wolves, picked up by an eagle, fed to its child who spits it out, turned into a snowball, then whisked back onto the train and back onto the same train car from which it started. Was this scene necessary? Probably not. Was it logical? Almost certainly not. But was it magical? Absolutely. It's like the ticket went on its own wonderful Christmas adventure, independent of the rest of the characters, and it was an excuse to show off the film's technology, and perhaps justify why animation was the ideal medium for this story. It's also reminiscent of the artwork from the original book by Chris Van Allsburg, suggesting a wider and perhaps more ominous world and ecosystem outside of the safe confines of the train cars. The hero boy's prioritization of the girl's needs above his own also shows a deepening understanding of compassion and leadership, just as the girl did earlier with Billy and the hot chocolate. And it reinforces the idea that faith and belief often thrive through community and connection. In trying to return the ticket, the hero boy follows the girl and conductor onto the roof. Now, why they decided to travel the entire length of a moving train on its snowy roof instead of its perfectly normal cars is anybody's guess, and clearly a gross violation of train safety guidelines. But it does lead to a pretty sick skiing sequence, so I don't know, you be the judge. Before that though, it also leads to one of the film's most bizarre interactions with a character creatively named Hobo. And while the character's personality is perhaps the least wonderful and inspiring, the mere existence of the character himself is possibly the most magical and otherworldly. Just him being there adds a mysterious and dreamlike feeling to the sequence. He taps into the hero boy's doubts and mocks his struggle to believe, basically acting as skepticism, pragmatism, and disillusionment in contrast to the boy's tentative and hopeful belief, demonstrating that faith sometimes requires the rejection of cynicism. The hobo is a personification of the hero boy's doubts and fears, yet his mere existence simultaneously rebukes his skepticism, unless it's all a dream, which the hero boy seems to confirm to himself that it's not. Simply the hobo's nature seems to confirm that perhaps the magic is real. That the hobo is portrayed by Tom Hanks, who also plays the conductor, the boy's father, Santa Claus, and most of the physical motion capture of the boy himself, is also interesting. I think it lends to the idea that at this point in his life, the hero boy is at a crossroads, and his decisions could lead him to grow up to be like any of these characters, optimism or pessimism, faith or cynicism. As the boy realizes the hobo's view is not the only truth, he begins to define his own beliefs. And this scene also relates to real-life struggles of people not being able to believe in themselves, being so afraid of being disappointed or let down that they'd rather not even take a chance. Yet sometimes the best belief is to dive in head first. Like on skis, there's an even more intense action sequence coming up too. But before that is a brief scene with the blockade of Caribou. And while it is fairly brief and ultimately has no real impact on the narrative, it's actually somewhat relevant thematically. If, like me, you want to keep searching for meaning in a 20-year-old children's animated film, the train being temporarily blocked is a metaphor for the obstacles of life, including the obstacles of doubt and the journey of belief, while the resolution is a reminder that life and faith are about persistence in the face of uncertainty. The fact that the hero boy collaborates with the hero girl to stop the train, then with the conductor and engineer to clear the blockade, even accidentally, continues to demonstrate the importance of trust and collaboration in life and in faith, a moment of self-discovery for the boy. It's also a moment of wonder, not just because of its absurdity, but also because it features Caribou, better known throughout the world as reindeer, the spirit of Christmas, and because moments of wonder and whimsy are often so necessary in Christmas adventures. This momentary whimsy becomes perhaps more important as it is then followed by probably the film's most intense sequence. The train rockets down the roller coaster like Glacier Gulch, the steepest downhill grade in the world, before coming to a dramatic halt atop the frozen lake, which thanks to the fireman and engineer, then begins to crack. What then follows is perhaps one of the coolest scenes in cinematic history. Logic be damned, the Polar Express pulls off the sickest J-turn ever put on the big screen. In all seriousness though, I actually think this scene is perfect for a movie like this. It's a wonderful use of the medium of computer-generated animation, and some great excitement for an action Christmas movie, the beauty and danger of childhood imagination. I think solving the Caribou blockade calmly and relatively peacefully, followed by solving the frozen lake hurriedly and stressfully, continues to demonstrate the uncertainty of the journey and the ongoing nature of obstacles. Solving one problem does not mean that there won't be another over the next hill or gulch. And through the strength and quick thinking of the conductor, the personification of faith and belief, the boy discovers more about the strength and importance of faith amid uncertainty and resilience amid strife. After that fairly chaotic 13 minutes or so, it's time for some quieter scenes, and the next one, though no less odd or stressful, is around 95 seconds long. It features abandoned toys in the train car, and while the scene is short, I think it's fairly memorable and important for a few reasons. The abandoned toys represent the abandonment of belief, specifically children who don't believe in Santa, magic, and Christmas, even if this isn't explicitly the reason for their abandonment. The sadness that hangs over the scene represents the sadness that comes with this loss of belief, especially of Christmas. It's sad to leave that feeling behind, to abandon it to adulthood, the same feelings that the hero boy is grappling with throughout the whole film. Equally, I think it's about the fragility of faith in the human spirit. It's easy to get knocked down and abandon the beliefs and support systems you once knew, but it's also important that someone comes along and tries to mend it, if only for the benefit of others, just as Santa Claus intends to do with the abandoned toys here, restoring and re-gifting them to those who need them. I think this moment, however brief it may be, has an impact on the hero boy, who considers the necessity to nurture belief, that neglecting it can lead to loss. And I think for a lot of viewers, intentional or not, this might remind them of their own abandoned toys, and of the importance, if not of playing with them again, then at least of passing them down to someone who will. There's also a very brief but quite unsettling sequence in which the hero boy is attacked by a puppet of Ebenezer Scrooge. Like the hobo who controls it, the puppet embodies the hero boy's struggles with cynicism, his fear that Santa isn't real and belief is foolish. A reminder to the character and the audience that the magic that we've just witnessed does not solve the boy's doubts. It's likely no accident too that the puppet is of Scrooge, a character from a different tale whose abandonment of Christmas leads down a very dark path, and whose eventual redemption shows that even the most lost souls can recapture their light, their faith, and their belief. Belief is a choice, and this encounter is a reminder of that, harrowing though it may be. The quieter moments continue as we get a sweet song sung by Billy, who is joined by the hero girl. We begin to understand more about why Billy is aboard the Polar Express, and why he hesitated to hop aboard initially. Billy's hesitation to board the train mirrors the hero boy's, but while the boy's leap of faith was more abstract, relating to belief in Santa, Billy's is tangible, relating to faith and belief in humanity, hoping for inclusion, connection, and meaning. Billy's hesitant leap also reflects the bittersweet nostalgia that many experience during Christmas. It's a magical time for many, but that doesn't also mean that it isn't isolating and especially dark for some, a reminder of their losses and the things that they do not possess. These feelings aren't mutually exclusive either. One can enjoy and desire the magic of Christmas, while also lamenting the isolation and hardships. The hero boy feels like he is abandoning Christmas. Billy feels like Christmas has abandoned him. Thankfully, he'll soon discover that it hasn't, just in time for them to reach the North Pole. And as if the journey here wasn't windy enough, here the tracks are literally windy, right at the end. One thing I've always loved about the film's depiction of the North Pole, and you can see parts of it in the book too, is how it feels like a factory, like a company town, where the employees, in this case the elves, live and work on a huge scale. And this isn't a small family operation or a quaint little village, it takes a factory. How else would Santa have enough presents to deliver to every child in the world? That makes sense too, since the artist used the Pullman factory in Chicago, Illinois as a reference for the North Pole Square. The Pullman Company was, fittingly enough, a manufacturer of railroad cars in the 19th and 20th centuries that built a company town in Chicago that housed thousands of employees. It's also where the Pullman strike began in 1894, leading to around 70 deaths and dozens of injuries, but that's another story. But I think designing it like this was perfect. It just invokes so much wonder and nostalgia, a hidden magical city at the literal top of the world. And it's as we hit the North Pole that the film's color palette begins to open up again. The clouds start to part, and the monochromatic blue and green of the journey become warmer tones, the reds and browns and vibrant greens of Christmas. And seeing the elves all gather at North Pole Square makes perfect sense too, because who would be more excited for Christmas than those who have slaved away all year to make it happen? Special shout out to my favorite levitating elf too, who was so important that the animators didn't even need to move his arms and legs. When they arrive at the North Pole, Billy chooses to stay on the train, and the hero boy and girl try to convince him to join, which inadvertently sends them off on a journey deeper into the factory. And I think the hero boy's decision to try and convince him to join them is demonstrative of his self-discovery, He still has his own doubts about Christmas, Santa, and the magic, but he knows that there's more power in trying to find the truth than to sit alone. And whether he believes it or not, whether the magic is real or not, he knows that Christmas Eve is best spent around others who care about you. Simply his behavior in this scene shows his development. He's no longer the nervous and hesitant boy who hopped on the train. He's far more confident and compassionate with his newfound friends. When they get deeper into the factories, the hero boy discovers a room full of turntables playing Christmas music, because of course the elves would be listening to the best Christmas song.
Silver bells.
But where the hero girl and Billy can hear the distant bells of Santa's sleigh, the hero boy can only hear the skipping of the record, signaling his diminishing belief. Yet he follows his friends on faith alone. The rest of the North Pole really feels logical too. As the filmmakers intended, it feels like we're getting a peek into how the world really works. We see the gift wrap hall and the sorting room, which seem like logical ways to organize the presents before Santa delivers them, and the surveillance room, which reveals that the world is a police state and Santa and his elves are our monitors, though importantly, somewhat compassionate ones. And of course, there are massive zeppelins that carry Santa's bag of presents to his sleigh, because everything about this operation has to be stylish. After a tumultuous but impressive landing, the children gather with the elves in North Pole Square and wait for Santa, and when he appears, the clock finally strikes midnight. Let's just ignore the cult-like status of Santa and his minions, and the reminders of a certain series of rallies that may have taken place in Nuremberg. Actually, let's not forget it. Santa or Hitler, the Poland Express, is now available exclusively on Patreon. I'm not joking. As the sleigh bells are placed on the reindeer, the hero boy cannot hear them, and after one drops to his feet, he still cannot hear it. Mind you, it probably doesn't help that that's not how you hold a bell, but who am I to judge? The bell really is the encapsulation of the boy's belief, a metaphor for belief and the fragility of wonder. It's the ultimate test of faith, and the boy begging to hear it demonstrates that he truly wants to believe. He wants that faith. It's the culmination of his inner growth. He realizes that belief is a choice, not a certainty, and he is no longer hesitant or skeptical, but confident in his values and choices. Should we all be so lucky to have a literal jingle to tell us that our heart is in the right place? And when the boy asks to receive the bell as his gift, it highlights his growth and shows his acceptance of belief. It's something he desires, something truly personal and meaningful, and especially vulnerable to admit to others. And of course, Santa's gentleness and grandeur is the embodiment of Christmas magic. There's some growth in other characters here too, even if subtle. Every child had a purpose for getting on the train, a need for this moment of self-discovery. The know-it-all is taught, at least briefly, to learn and listen to others. The hero girl learns to be a leader, to trust her gut, and we see this growing confidence over the course of the movie. Initially, being asked, "Are you sure?" causes her to hesitate and panic. The last time the question is presented to her, she's confident in herself. She is a leader. Billy realizes the transformative power of shared experiences, a growth from his earlier loneliness. It's okay to depend on others, to rely on your friends, and he admits as much to the conductor.
So, can you count on us to get you home safe and sound?
Absolutely. Me. And my friends.
And Billy's eventual participation in the group also reflects the hero boy's role in helping him find belonging and belief. He didn't just find it for himself, but he helped others do so too. In contrast to most of the movie so far, the train ride back home is far quieter and more introspective, such is the bittersweet nature of growing up. The conductor's final piece of advice to the hero boy:
One thing about trains. It doesn't matter where they're going. What matters is deciding to get on.
is initially a little puzzling because, it kind of does matter where you're going. Has the conductor ever caught a train before? Has he ever lived somewhere where the train service only runs once or twice a day? Not knowing where you're going could lead you to a place where you really don't want to end up, or where there's no easy way to return home. Besides, isn't that pretty much the reason the hero boy hopped on in the first place? Because he discovered where he was going?
Why, to the North Pole, of course!
Anyway, I digress. I think the meaning behind this line is important, both to the boy and to viewers. It's about taking a chance, about taking a leap of faith, and choosing to believe. In something, someone, in yourself. It's okay to be hesitant and to think things through, but sometimes you've just got to take that leap, do that thing. Buy that book, ask out that person, start that artwork or podcast or YouTube channel. Believe in Christmas. Sometimes the most important thing is getting on the train and seeing where it takes you, and maintaining that belief is just as important as getting it in the first place, just as the bell demonstrates. The hero boy's faith and belief endures and does so even into adulthood. He understands the importance of holding on to belief and wonder as he grows. His journey has made him wiser and more connected to his values. His enduring ability to hear the bell represents the triumph of belief over cynicism. The film's world blurs the lines between imagination and reality to really emphasize how childhood imagination fuels the experiences that shape who we are. That others around the hero boy lose the ability to hear the bell demonstrates the fleeting nature of childhood wonder. There is a tension between growing older and maintaining that belief and wonder. But it's not all about childhood, it's about choosing to continue to believe even into adulthood. Belief is often a lifelong choice, not a fleeting childhood whim. Because sure, this movie is all about Christmas and whether or not the child still believes in Santa Claus. And considering when the film came out and when it's played each year, and considering a large part of its audience will relate to those themes specifically, those are incredibly appropriate. It's a perfect setting for a magical film about nostalgia and childhood wonder. For young children, it's a fun adventure. For older children, it's relatable and inspiring. For adults, it's endearing and nostalgic. But Christmas and Santa are just the vehicles the film uses to put its message on the tracks. It's about triumph of belief over cynicism, of wonder over darkness, and of self-determination and belonging over doubt and selfishness. And I think the director Robert Zemeckis' favorite line in the movie,
It says,
No! It's nothing I need to know.
is a perfect encapsulation of the message the film is trying to deliver. It's your own perspective that matters most. No matter what you choose to believe in and who you choose to do it with, ultimately it's up to you. It's a personal experience, a personal perspective, and one that I think the film's message delivers beautifully. As far as believing in Christmas goes, films like this make it a lot easier for me to recapture that increasingly vanishing magic each year. And as far as believing in Santa goes, well, of course I do. I've met him. In fact, I grew up around 2 of them, but they always went by different names to me.
Well, see ya.